afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for coming to the conversation. Power Conversations and Connections with Susan is a vision that was given to me by the Holy Spirit himself, right? He said to me that I was going to rebrand Susan R. Appleton, Creating Spaces for Women to Thrive. The podcast is the beginning of that, and it has launched. This is going to be a series of events. They will be invitation only, such as this, and then they will be public as well. Why are we here? Because we need to have conversations that we don't like to have, right? So there is, someone asked in the last conversation, what are the ground rules? And I said, right, there's no ground rules, but then I went into the ground rules. Which simply are for you to be yourself. We're here to have a conversation about showing up for yourself. The intersection of personal, whether you want to talk about it from a professional standpoint, whether you want to listen. But the purpose of my brand is for my daughter, who is, much younger than I am, and for people such as her in that age range to learn from those of us who have made some mistakes, had some bumps and some bruises, right? Mm-hmm. But also to tell their side of the story so that we can engage. This is not tight. It is a free-flowing conversation. It's not an interview. And so I'm going to start, but I want to thank you for your time. And again, why were you chosen? Because you absolutely bring a uniqueness to the table. Everyone in here I have a relationship with, some at the very beginning, others more long term. And that's the purpose, for us to have everyone bring their ideas, bring their thoughts to the table. I ask that you be authentic, right? Don't fake it. Because that doesn't teach anybody to do anything, right? And we're getting to a point and in a space where our stories really matter. And we know now that they matter, right? So when you feel the need to speak, just say what it is that's on your heart. And we will get started. So welcome to the conversation. So I'm going to start. The topic, show up for yourself, is specific to the women in this room, right? The invitation only was purposeful. It was intentional. Because whether I know you personally, or whether I know you from social media, whether I know you from the Pillars Lounge, which is where we are, there's something about you that shows up. And there's something that got you there, right? I also know that there are spaces in our lives where we still don't show up to our fullness, right? So when I wanted to do show up for yourself, I came to this because I didn't always show up for myself, right? I always tell people the person that you see sitting here, is not the person that I once was. Nor do I show up for myself all the time. But what I have come to know is when I showed up for myself, it was game on, right? But we've had instances where I didn't use my voice. So for me, a big part of showing up for yourself is using your voice, especially as women. And when I began to think about my journey and really look at how I got to a point of using my voice, it was really through some courage, a lot of tenacity, right? And working through hurt. which made me say my voice was valuable, right? So I'm going to start with Al. And let me say this. Over the last couple of years, I've really seen Al show up for herself. And so how did you get to the point where what does show up for yourself mean for you, and how did you get there?
I think for me, I always played the background. And that was my comfortable spot, was playing the background, not being seen doing what I had to do, but not making a ruckus. And I think I started showing up. Well, I had a lot of encouragement from you and from Carrie Davis, and who told me pretty much that my words matter, that I am worth listening to. And that was a hard adjustment. I'm still working through it. But I do like who I am when I do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I like that, like who we are when we do it. And I see a lot of head nodding. So how does it feel when you actually do it? When you show up for yourself?
For me, I think it feels like something we've always wanted to do again, but never had the courage or the confidence to do so. But more lately, it feels like this is what God put in me to do. And when I actually show up and do it, it brings more clarity and understanding for myself, and even for God, like that channel, that connection, that we're supposed to have with Him, our Creator, because I'm learning what's inside of me has always been here. And in order for me to be able to understand it and for others to understand it, I have to show up for myself at the end of the day, right?
But go ahead.
But I like how I feel and who I am when I show up for myself. And when you gave the topic of the conversation tonight, I was like, oh, this is the conversation I should probably be sitting in, because the course of days and weeks and months, it's just been something that's been on my heart, and it's been a message that's been coming to me lately to really show up for myself and use my voice. So I'm glad I am here.
Mm-hmm. So if it feels good, why don't we do it more often? What stops you from doing it?
Fear of being judged. Fear of not having or saying the right things, and trying to show up for who people think you are. So sometimes people watching you and they, she this and she that, and so it's trying to live up to those expectations of other people instead of accepting yourself for who you are and showing up that way.
Well said. I'd like to add to that, because I think that when you show up for yourself, it's a spirit of ease that comes with it, right?
Yes.
But we as women,
Yes.
especially Black women, we are always striving and working hard all the time for ourselves, for our families, for our business, for who we work with, our employers. But when you really show up for yourself, it's like an ease, and we're not used to that rest. I would have to say sometimes we we just so into the routine. We love to be driven. We love to be, busy and, just at it all the time. But when you really show up for yourself, you have time to do your nails. You have time to do your hair. You have time for self-care when you really show up for yourself. So it's a different pace of things.
And I think that it's not always because we want to be busy.
Okay.
I think one of the things that's unique to Black women is we've been trained that the busyness has more meaning than the non-busyness, right? What are you doing? I think that's why it's hard for us sometimes to just settle down and do nothing, right? And I remember, when I would start to want to sit and do nothing, it was like, why you shouldn't be doing this? Why aren't you doing that? And I had to train myself to value myself, right? And I think that showing up for yourself means a bit of taking yourself back from those expectations, from those worldly, expectations where you just drown. I had 5 sisters. Did I have 5 or 4? Was it 4 or 5 of us? I had 4. It was 5 of us. Okay. I had 4 sisters, and I found it difficult to find my footing, not because we were so close in age, but because we were so far in age. We were 8 years and 4 years and 12 years and 14 years apart. And so sometimes I didn't know what showing up for myself meant, right? And so you go through, I think, figuring out who you are before you can really grasp what showing up for yourself is.
I want to add another thing to that. What the ladies add, like fear and criticism, judgment. But another thing I think we all do as women is self-sabotage sometimes. Yes. So that would probably be at the top of my list. Self-sabotage. And you have people out there, they want to chip away at you. I recently experienced that over the last couple of years because I had gotten to a point where I was showing up for myself. I was feeling good. Everything's going great. I'm walking and who I am. And I'm there like 100%. But you have people who, they come around you and their energy seems to be, yeah, I like you. I like what you got going on. But at the end of the day, they're chipping away at you. And you don't see it directly up front sometimes. It's very manipulative. It kind of slides in there. So for me, that's something that I recently experienced that was new to me because I've never, I guess maybe as an adult or someone walking in their confidence had ever had that happen to me. And it took a while for me to recognize what was going on because it was very sneaky. Like it was just hard to, find what was, see what was happening. But I think that's another thing. And when you have that happening to you, it just brings some doubt. When people place doubt in you, and I know that kind of comes along with fear. The devil wants to see that. We have to be careful about others putting doubt inside of us.
And when you find someone who's trying to do that, do you call them out? Have you gotten to the point where you're calling them out?
Ooh, yeah, you got to get that. Yeah,
Anybody gotten to the point where they're calling them out? As we say, call a spade a spade, right?
Right.
And I think there's some fear that goes along with that, right? Because if I call you out, now I'm calling you out because I think that you really are diminishing my space. But if I call you out, I'm still afraid that you're not going to be with me, right? So I might lose you, but you diminishing my space. And I would sometimes rather have you in that capacity. I know when I was younger, that was the case. Because you kind of just brush stuff off, don't you? Oh, that's just how she is. That's just how they are. Oh, she didn't mean that. When some other girlfriend calls her out and you take up for her, right? So you get to the point where you call a spade a spade. I'm at this point in my life where I'm willing to have a few. I'm willing to have a few who I know are really on Team Susan. Right? And I don't have to pretend around you. You don't have to pretend around me. And I don't expect you to pretend around me. And when you do, I could see it. Right? Because we have a relationship. So who's getting to the point where they're calling out those persons who are, kind of diminishing, is what I call diminishing their space.
I struggle with that because you're expected to be a certain way because of whatever title you may or may not have. But in my journey, I'm calling out differently, whereas I'm sharing, listen, this is what you did. This is how it made me feel. What is your response to that determines either we can try to grow from this or bye. It just,
One or the other.
it just is what it is. And I find a lot of times when I've done it that way, and I don't know, I might be being deceived, but I didn't mean it that way.
But you said it. You responded.
So, so I struggle with that because I want to have the conversation to give you grace because we can't be mad at people when they don't know what they did.
Right.
It's no point in me talking to you about what she did to me. And she just on her merry way, thinking we fine. But me and Susan out to lunch, I'm talking about, I ain't got time for that anymore. So I'm talking directly to her, but I do try to give grace and see. Okay now. Let's be clear. Only once. You only got one time. Tired. I woke up tired and went to bed tired. You got one time. There ain't no second chance. And I just, for certain people who I've seen the action for again after I've expressed it, I love you from a distance. I do wish you well, but I don't have energy for that in my life right now. But I still love you though.
Right.
And I like grace, but grace, I'll give you grace if I don't think you know what you're doing. But behavior is behavior. And I'm sorry, you can't do the same thing over and over and in a different way and over.
But what if they're doing the same thing and you never addressed it?
No, we addressed it.
Okay.
We addressed it. Because I
Still
think,
continue.
because I do think people, we're so habitual that we do things that we don't know. That we're doing it until somebody says something.
Right.
But once I say something, that's the grace. Right? I just really feel like if you want to be vested and I define how it makes me feel, then you will put forth the effort to change that behavior. Because how am I when we're sitting around as girlfriends and we're talking, right? If I'm being authentic and I'm showing my true self, how often do you want me to do that if every time I do that you throw salt? Right? I know a lot of stuff for me, I've just grown in my tolerance. Like I don't have it anymore.
But that's part of showing up, right, for yourself, because now you have come to a radical acceptance of what you will accept and what you won't. You have come to a place of showing up with your real, true boundaries, whereas before people might have had an opportunity to run over it, but now you're saying, no, I'm showing up. This is what I want. This is what I don't want, and it's okay. And that to me is really maturity and a real strong person that shows up for themselves, because you can be in that space and it does not bother you. You're going to be whoever you're going to be over there. I'm going to be who I'm going to be, and we're going to just live our lives. But that's radical showing up for yourself. Like,
and when somebody values that relationship, when you let them know that this is my boundary and this is what I did not like, or this is how you made me feel, when you value that relationship, then that's when you move into, okay, I can show them grace. I can give them that, because in return they're going to do the same for me, because now you're showing me the grace when I'm expressing to you that this is how that made me feel. This is how, this is what my boundary is. And I think a lot of times when we show up for ourselves, as individuals, and they're not used to showing up for themselves.
right.
And a lot of times when we show
That's
up,
good.
we give them the courage to say, you know what, I am brave. I can say that this is how that made me feel. This is how this is making me feel, or this is what I won't accept, or this is what I will accept. And a lot of times when we show up for ourselves, it helps others show up for themselves. Because a lot of people aren't used to showing up for themselves.
That's true.
And I agree. They're not used to it,
Just there.
and they don't know how.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
Well, I don't know that any of us. Well,
Not
you know that.
really.
Well, that's not true because I don't know everybody's
Everybody's
background and every woman in the world. So I don't want to make that statement.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have had some conversations when I was growing up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
We all have.
About how to be present.
Yep.
About
How to stand up for yourself.
how to stand up for myself.
Speaking of.
I would have liked time
Yeah.
to be taken to realize that I didn't know how to do that and to see some of what I was experiencing. And I didn't have the voice at that time, to express it. So I think that's why it's important for us to tell people what their actions mean and to set those very clear boundaries. And then to set a standard. How long are you going to let them break the boundary
Right. Absolutely.
before you call it?
Turn the other cheek. You know?
Ain't got but two cheeks.
So I'm
This answer should have a two cheeks.
on that note, we grew up in the church. We grew up in the church, and so when you talk about showing up, I think the most education I got about showing up was you got to be in the Christmas program and the Easter program, and you got to sing in the choir. That's showing up, but that's the most conversation. And that wasn't even a conversation. That was you gonna do it. That was it. So my parents, and I'm number 8 of 12. So, I had to fight just to, get to the dinner table. So it was always a struggle, but it was also one of those things I think Mama didn't have time because there were a lot of us. So I watched my siblings ahead of me and I behaved accordingly. And that was about it. But I think when you're brought up in the church, there was just a lot of things that was left up to give it to Jesus, and that was it. Talk to Jesus about it. Like you didn't have nobody else, a physical person like right here to talk about. Talk to Jesus and pray about that and let that go.
Let it go.
And I will say a scripture on it because when you first brought this point up, I thought about faithful are the wounds of a friend, right? So it's like it's inevitable that someone is going to hurt you and cross those boundaries. It's a part of life. And so I find myself, going through this journey right now, a lot of transition in life where I'm confronting a lot of people and having to have hard conversations. But what I found out was that it's okay for me to be hurt by someone that I truly am in a relationship with, that it's okay because maybe this is a learning experience, right? It's okay to, again, going back to showing up for myself, having the hard conversation to say, well, maybe this is an awareness moment. And sometimes we also have to have vulnerability because we can be so hard about, they're not going to do that to me, especially when it comes to men. You ain't going to do this to me. We have a lot of boundaries with certain groups, and certain, I will say for me, if it's a white man, I'm like, but so far you going with me. I have my own, lens. I'm just being honest. Right. In business, it's really tough for, as a black woman, you're always dealing with that. So I said, in that space, I'm growing. So I'm going to allow some of these wounds to come so that I can mature. And then I don't miss a business deal because I got a little chip on my shoulder somewhere, right? I got to make sure I'm not going to lose a good friend because I'm not used to being in this level and in this room with these type of women and things like that. So it's some things that I have to really take in and allow, maybe both cheeks to get hit. You know what I mean? Because it's a part of my journey. So I will say, there's another side to, us taking a little hit if we're all, vulnerable in that space. Because again, that's showing up for myself. And say, I'm going to be vulnerable.
And I'm going to be here anyway.
I'm going to be here anyway.
I'm going to be here anyway. And you said two things. you brought up men, and you brought up the workplace, right? The first thing I thought about when you brought up men was in relationships. But in the context of what you talked about, in the workplace, that's a whole other beast, isn't it?
That's another conversation.
That's a whole other, that's a whole other beast because,
Locked and loaded. You like,
you know, and it's not always intentional that everyone in the room is a black woman, right? It just so happens to be for this conversation, that's how it happened. But when we talk about showing up for ourselves in the workplace, having been, you know, in the military and climbing the ladder, you know, Deborah's at that place now, you know, and I don't know, I had to have a chip for a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, part of me showing up was bringing the chip. Because otherwise we didn't get as far as we could have, right?
Yeah.
Oh, what we came here for.
And I would hope that things are changing. But my daughter deals with that.
Yeah.
You know, she deals with it from men, and she deals with it from other African American women.
Yes.
Let's be real.
Let's be honest.
Okay, we can stifle each other as it relates to showing up for ourselves, and I think that is rooted in the competition of it all. Right? I think it takes a really great leader to say, or you know, a business owner to say, I always used to tell my leaders is give everything you have away. Give it away. Why are you hoarding it? Why are you keeping someone else, you know, from growing? And I think it was always grounded in their own insecurities and having to, if I show her, you know, they're going to take it. And I think that is the case sometimes in the workplace with men. You know, they are very intimidated.
But it goes back to what you said about how we were brought up, each one of us respectively in your different situations. And I think about my last corporate job. So I'm in tech. One, there's not a lot of women in tech. This little brown face. we have a whole different thing. So at my last corporate job, I was the only woman certified trainer, and then I was the only black one. But I didn't know how to show up there because I felt like, and I think I was inadvertently taught, just be happy that you're in. I was so happy that I was in the room.
Yes.
And I was just like, but now that I think about it, I'm like, girl, you ain't open your mouth at all while you was in this room. Because I didn't know,
That's good.
because I didn't want to be portrayed as I knew it all. I didn't know how to show up. And in fact, so when I left that job, the owner was like, I didn't even know you knew how to do it. Because I downplayed myself so much because I didn't know how to show up. He literally reached out to me on LinkedIn after starting my own business. I had no idea you had all of this in you. Well, appreciate you, but I didn't know. I didn't know how to show up and be humble.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Because you in the room, you should be. Yeah.
Either or. You can't have both and. It's either or. Either you're going to be educated and humble, but you can't be educated and humble. Or you can be educated and have this high level of knowledge and understanding in areas.
I have a question. How do I teach my daughter to show up?
And that's why we're here.
That's a good one.
Not just, I mean, my daughter's 28, right?
29.
Excuse me. Excuse me. January, she's 29. Ooh wee.
I've been 29 for 20 years.
Me too, girl. And that's a great point because your daughter is how old?
She's 10.
She's 10. So that's the whole purpose of this, of us just really being honest about where we are and how we got to where we are. And one of the things that we all shook our heads about when I said we didn't have those kind of conversations in my house, have those kind of conversations. You know, that it is absolutely okay to show up. We made a big statement as Black women when we started to show up with our natural hair.
Yes.
It actually took a law. Go figure.
Right.
For us to be able to not be bothered when we wear our natural hair. How crazy is that? But that was because we decided, hey,
This is us.
we're going to show up. So I think that the answer to that is you've got to share. You got to share your stories, and you got to be honest.
I agree with you. You have to. So my daughter is 21, and she amazes me because she shows up for
I
herself.
know.
I'm 46,
She looks 50
and
and a half.
and she inspires me. But she says I inspired her to how to show up for herself.
Wow.
She's very articulate. She's not an angry Black woman, or so to say. She's not. She's very quiet, soft-spoken, but she's very direct and intentional. And she'll say, "Well, this is the conflict I had in this club at school." She goes to FAMU, rattler, about to graduate, and she'll tell me about the conflict, and she'll tell me how they resolved it, and I'm just sitting there amazed. And she's like, "Well, you taught me to speak up." And she grew up in a small country town in southeast Georgia, where at the high school it's about 50 Black kids, and about 30 of them are her cousins. And the other 20 that weren't her cousins were her cousins' cousins. And everybody knew each other, but we weren't from there. So we were the outsiders from the West Coast. And so we always were having a battle being a smart Black girl from the city. And so I would say to her, you know, do you need me to come and say something? Or you got this?
I did that.
Do you want me to come to school, or you got this?
I
Even
did
at FAMU, she'll have something. Do you want me to step in, or you got this? And she would take it to where you need to take it to. But when you need me, I'm there. And so I'm excited about her. But I didn't have that. Now my mother, she was a beast, but she was a beast like because we were scared of her. We were scared of her.
That's a whole different beast in itself.
We were scared of her. But my daughter and I, we always had a situation. I used to call it no repercussions, even with my son, no repercussions, period. Let's talk. What's happening? How are you feeling? What's going on? What did I do? Or what did you do? Or what happened? And this is a free space right here. No repercussions. You know, we don't cuss or nothing, but no repercussions.
It's so funny because me and my daughter, we call it Alice and Kayla moments.
Okay.
That means I can't judge her. I'm not a mommy.
Right.
I've got to be open-minded, and we have these free-flowing discussions because, you know, I've got to take my mommy hat off. No matter inside I be here, but I take that mommy hat off, and we have these conversations. And I've heard everybody talking about, you know, how they didn't have these. I've come from a long lineage of strong, powerful Black women. And so when I say I played the background, I might not have been completely honest. When I was younger, I did not play the background. I was everybody's champion. I championed everybody, and you know how it goes when you're at the job, you champion them, but when it's time for them to speak up, nobody says a word. So I taught myself to play the background. So I think the difference is what I'm teaching my daughter is don't champion anybody else, champion yourself. But I'm showing how to do it without coming off as aggressive and angry, showing her the proper way. What you call, I teach you read every document they give you, because you're gonna learn to fight following the rules. And so that's the, I think some of the most important things I'm teaching her is, you know, I was a little radical and stuff like, hey, you don't have to be the loudest to get stuff done. You can quietly move and still accomplish your goals by being firm, fair, and final. Period.
And I think that firm, fair, and final.
3 F's.
Firm,
All right, with the 3 F's.
And I like that because it is, so I think we're applying even when we don't think we're applying, right? So like Webby and Al, when I hear my daughter have conversations, I'll be like, girl, it's good, right? But honestly, I didn't begin to have those conversations with my daughter until she was in her 20s.
Right.
Right? So those formative years, those 13s, 14s, and there can be levels of conversation.
Yes.
Right? 13, 14, when we began to really have those conversations about showing up, because I have become adamant about do not be in a space without showing up. Whether you're intentionally there because you're learning, because I think most of us have dipped onto the entrepreneur side, and some of us are still doing that completely, and especially Leslie in the military. I mean, we have to have a voice, but there's a temperance to it, right? Yeah. But you have to be able to know when it's time, you know. And I think one of my biggest lessons from the military about showing up, I was in dispersing, right? I dealt with the money, and I had a junior officer that had come to the Kennedy. I dealt with all the money in dispersing on the ATMs, on the ship, all of that, right? And there was a mix-up where the ATMs over the course of like 24 hours just gave money away. Why would you do that? Why would you take money that you know wasn't yours? You know you're in the military, you know they're going to find out.
Right.
But instead of, in the process of finding out who received the money, so on and so forth, she attributed them able to get the money from my mistake. And I remember I had a master chief or a senior chief who was phenomenal. He was fair, firm, and final. And if you were taking care of business, he had your back.
Right.
And I remember standing in the cage, and if you don't, it's not a cage. You got money upon money upon money in there. Now I'm loading the money. Of course, there's lots of cameras, but if I wanted to take something, I would take it. So I remember telling her, mostly out of anger, and I was a E5, I think. And I remember telling her two things that she could not do was test my credibility and call my integrity. And I remember I told her, I said, Disvo, y'all say you can't sue the military. But if you question my integrity about this money, I promise you that's going to have to come true. Because that's not what you're going to do. And I think I'm sharing that to say that was one of my proudest moments of showing up for myself in a situation that could have really been detrimental. Fast forward, of course, they figured everything out, but that wasn't the point. And the reason I think it also made me angry is she was a black woman. And she was new. So first of all, you don't even know how we roll around. Right? And you're trying to assert yourself. And I think we do a dishonor when we don't teach our girls to be able to, when you don't say something like, hey, you got it? If you don't have it, I could do it. But I know one of the things I had to learn was not go in like a ball of fire. Because I know she didn't invite me in as her backup because she knew I was going to come in swinging. And showing up for yourself don't mean you got to go in swinging.
Right. I'm learning now that my daughter is teaching me how to show up because she started going to therapy, and her and her dad don't have the best relationship, and I'm trying to have this relationship that I did not have with my mom with her, that she can talk to me, and with her background now she tries to be my therapist. She's a play therapist. I mean, she's with the kids, but it was almost to the point of just the knowledge. Like I have to go to her and just tell her how much I admire her, because I did not, and I still don't. Professionally, everybody swear you got it going on or you're doing so well, but personally, I'm jacked up, and so. She'll be like, oh, no, you're not going to say that. Or, this is what you need to be thinking about it. I'll be like, don't be trying to, put your mental on me, don't do that. But I realize that it's so, I wish I would have caught it at her age, because to be older and still feel like you're struggling and you don't have nobody that won't judge you because you still got to show up like you got it together.
Why?
Right.
Why do you still have to show up like you have it to? Now, don't get me wrong. We all know when it's time to go to work, I'm coming to the table, right? But why do you still feel like you show up like you've got it going on?
I think I have been playing the imposter syndrome for so long that I don't know how to change it.
That's good.
It's not good.
No, I mean that's a good statement. That's a good statement to say.
And I think something else that everybody's really exhibited tonight, in my experience, I think that showing up for yourself takes a lot of reflection, and being able to turn the mirror on yourself, look at why your relationships may be this way or why your work environment is this way. Sometimes it is other people, but sometimes it's so valuable and it's so beneficial for you to understand your part in things and understand yourself better so that your relationships can flourish, so that your friendships and your relationship with your children and your work relationships can just kind of like be a lot more beneficial to you, and you can be more beneficial to them. But I think sometimes, or at least in my experience, reflection is very, I don't want to be dramatic, but sometimes it's traumatizing to reflect
It is.
on some of the things that you've been through, or
Yes.
some of the ways that you have felt when people have done you wrong. And so for me, I may reflect and get in that reflection, and then I'm like, oh no, this is too much. I gotta stop. Let me go get busy doing something, or let me go cook dinner. So I'll stop myself in the middle of that reflection when I really needed to take time to go deeper and get that clarity or that better understanding. So I think doing that and getting in habit of that and being able to reflect and understand why you are the way you are, gives us more insight to be able to understand why or how we should show up for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Not to jump in, because I know I'm any moment, but I was gonna say one of the things I really was gonna bring up for myself this year that I have been practicing, that is so true, right in line with self-reflection, is every time I tell myself that I do get hurt and I've been in those vulnerable moments and somebody's disappointed me, I tell myself that it's okay. That it's not a bad thing to love and give people chances. It's not a bad thing that I made this mistake. I learned something out of it. And it's really hard. I'm telling y'all, I'm about to have my crying moment, but it's very hard to tell yourself that it's okay to make those mistakes, because I think that part of showing up for yourself is also loving yourself in a radical way. Like really just saying it's okay, because we're not told that it's okay. Like everything around you is going to tell you it's not okay. So it's very important that we tell ourselves that it is okay. It is okay. Like I can't tell you a day hasn't gone by. I'm going through, like I said, so many transitions in my life, but I have to tell myself every day, Carla, it's okay. It's okay that this person let you down. It's okay that you let them in and they disappointed you greatly. But keep going and keep loving, and don't be afraid to love again, because by harboring, all of that guilt, all of that shame, I've been really studying a lot about what the difference between guilt and shame is, knowing that maybe I did make a mistake, but I'm not a mistake. I'm not a bad person. I don't have a bad lens here, because a lot of times it creates self-doubt. Do I know how to make great decisions? Am I doing this right? Or maybe I don't know what I know that I think I know. It's like all of those things that you can cycle in, and I have to tell myself repeatedly, Carla, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. It's nothing. You are perfectly and wonderfully designed, and it's okay. And that is showing up for Carla. That is that. I mean, if I had to say anything.
And I think what you just said, that's showing up for you. I can't define what showing up for you is. And you don't have a right to define what showing up for me is. And that's what I mean when I say, why are you doing what you're doing? Self-reflection and showing up. I have been through one of the best things that I have ever done for myself was to journal. That's the next conversation. Journaling saved my life.
It is.
And and when I say that, that's because that's my connection, right? My connection with God. That's when He talks to me. That's when I deal with my stuff, because I know some things I brought on myself. Some things I decided what they looked like, even though they looked like something else. And some things did look just like I thought they looked, but I made an excuse for it, you know? And so knowing where we are, and I think sometimes we just have to stop and say, when I say I'm not doing it anymore, I don't mean at that very moment everything changes. Right. But it's very intentional. It's very intentional, and we get those little pauses and we take those mental breaks, you know. And I had, I met our freedom through the chamber. Well, we got connected, but we did a lot of work through the chamber, and she's been able to flourish, right, in the atmosphere. And just in that whole, not just the chamber, but I just remember thinking how much I wanted to be what they wanted me to be at the table. But I wasn't. Like, I didn't agree with everything. And I found myself being once again, okay, I'm just going to let you think.
Right.
I'm just going to let you think you know what this is all about. Meanwhile, at the ranch.
Back at
the ranch.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to go about it a different way now. But I had to be okay with taking some L's. Because the expectation was that I did it like that. Right? I decided for me, and this is just an example, that I was not going to do it anymore. That I was coming to the table with my smart, highly intelligent self.
Very good.
Who didn't necessarily have to agree with everything. And so that's why I posed the question. Not out of anything other than the fact that, and that's of course not your reality, my example that I used, but I made a decision that I'm not going to let you make me feel like I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Like I don't.
Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I didn't know everything, and I was in a learning posture. But I knew some things.
We know something.
And I just decided to stop. You know, I decided to. If it took me not being invited, then so be it. Because I'm not going to mold myself into who you think you want me to show up as.
You said you have to be willing to take some L's, but I've learned in my professional experience, kind of getting my foot into my career, I've learned that what you think could be a L might be a W if you show up for yourself in the way that God wants you to.
And that's why I'm kind of sitting here and listening to everybody, and I'm getting some realizations, but I kind of want to take it back a little bit. We talked about how we were raised, and our mothers talking to us and showing us how to show up. And I'm pretty sure a lot of women in here can agree with me that we experienced a lot of tough love. Because we talk about that fear, right? My mom, she the old lady, petite name, but baby, me and my brother, we were scared of her. She got us together. She did not have no behavior issues out of us for the most part, and if she did, she sure knew how to correct them, right? But it's a lot of learned behavior, because I think that we were raised with with tough love. She was a single mom with 2 kids, And as I think back on like the family, you know, other people in my family, I had so many smart, bright people in my family, but we didn't talk like that. Like no one taught me, and it was so funny because all the people in my family are educators. Number one,
Wow.
my grandmother, my aunts, a lot of educators in my family, but we never talked. No one taught me, you know, as a young woman, you can stand up and say this. You can be this. You know, it's okay to do this or be whatever you want. And as I grew older, or got older, you know, I always knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. No one ever talked that into me, but I always felt it in me, you know, because I always had that spirit where I want to climb the ladder and I want to, you know, do what I want to do in my heart and my mind. But I always was shy about it too, because no one ever talked me through it as a young girl. And I think, you know, as we get older, this carries over into our relationships, how we raise our children. And that tough love can turn into not showing up for ourselves, because when we're getting that tough love, we're not showing up for ourselves as young people, because even as young people, we have rights, you know, to a certain degree. We should be able to say how we feel, right? Oh, I don't like that, Mom, or that makes me feel this way. No.
Everyone has a voice.
We have a voice.
Everyone has a voice.
Even as children.
Even as children.
And
We just weren't taught that.
We weren't taught that. We could not use that voice.
And I think that's what you said. It was disrespect.
It was disrespect.
I think now we know.
Yes.
And even in the sharing, there has to be some temperance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? We wasn't taught the temperance. Right? And I truly believe that if we can take some of those things and kind of transfer them. You know, one of the things we're talking about here, everything that we've talked about is showing up for yourself.
Exactly.
With the hope that those who listen to the conversation, you know, take away something that will allow them to begin to have those inner conversations. Because before I can show up as for myself out there for you all, I've got to show up for myself in here for me. That internal dialogue.
Girl. And it was so funny. That was the other thing I was going to talk about, that journaling. As a little girl, I would write. I had a journal ever since I could remember. Ever since I could remember, I had a journal. And I would write in that journal every single day.
We called it a diary back then.
Yeah, we did.
There's a lock on it. I literally did. And when I was writing in my diary, I said everything I wanted to say that I would never say to my mom.
Girl, yes.
It cousins.
Everybody.
Anything I wanted to be off my chest, I would say it in that diary. But it was like two different worlds. And outside of that diary, I didn't use my voice. I didn't use my confidence. I didn't say what I knew or what I wanted to do. I just held it all in. And we go through life holding back ourselves, holding stuff in at the table, in the room, or wherever we are.
So where are we now? Where are you now in this? This all began kind of in my heart of hearts. With what I call the evolution of a fat and black girl, right? That would be me. This life journey, these internal conversations, this inner tough love, like get your shit together, Sue, before you can tell somebody else. Looking at what was in my family, right? And looking at what wasn't. And just really being honest, you know, about it. You know, those diaries that turned into journaling, many of them I threw away. Like, because I didn't want to die. And they'd be read like I wouldn't matter, I was dead. But to me, you know, they were just that raw. And perhaps that's something we go back to. You know, to gain the courage, to teach the courage, you know, to get that, you know, that bravado that we need to really be out here, not just for our children, you know, but for our businesses and for the people that we choose to, you know, to work for, or with. And I think that the biggest takeaway for me is that it's a continuous process.
It is. It's never ending.
It's a continuous process. Like I know, and it's a temperance. I keep using that word because I show up for myself. With some people, I show up for myself, and with some people, I've defined, like I define what showing up for myself is. Because like I don't trust you. I don't trust you with everything. So this is what showing up for myself with you looks like.
Right.
But I'm in control.
Right.
Is it? I think it's okay in the relationship that I'm thinking about.
Okay.
When I say that, it's okay because that person is judgmental.
So they don't deserve certain things.
That person is can see you. They can't see them.
Okay.
And so it was one of the relationships that, based on what my therapist said to me, if the relationship is worth keeping, then you define what that looks like. And so I show up for myself in a way that I'm not exposed. Because the exposure, the honesty, the authenticity is received with judgment. And why didn't you? And what if you had? So I just eliminate that part of the conversation. We just talk fluff.
So that's boundaries, right? That's boundaries.
That's
That's you
Yeah,
saying,
that
this is
is
what I'm going to
boundaries.
deal with. This is how I'm going to engage with you. And this is how much I'm going to let you engage with me. That's
I
the
remember
boundaries.
having to show up in different stages in my life. I had to show up differently when I had my child. I had to show up differently when I started a career. I had to show up differently when I got married. I had to show up differently when I got a divorce. Because you, especially in divorce and especially in relationships, you show up and your mom and your wife and your friend, and you're not able to be you. And you lose yourself. And when I started showing up for myself, you're thinking, well, this is not how you are, but it was who I was. But I had to be mom, I had to be wife, I had to be sister, I had to be daughter. And now I get an opportunity to be myself, and you don't like that. But I allowed you to be yourself.
Right.
But when it was time for me to show up for myself, you didn't like that. When it was time for me to use my voice, you didn't like that. But this is who I was. I just allowed those other roles in my life to take over. And I remember clear as day going to the court, and she asked me if I had anything else to say. I asked him if he had anything else to say. And I said, I've given all I can give. I don't have anything else. And in that moment, when I looked at that moment, I'm thinking that I lost myself, but I actually gained myself back. Because you're taught not to divorce. You're taught to stay married. You're taught for better or for worse. But when you don't have anything else, and you're the only one fighting, and you're the only, and I was like, man, am I being selfish because I feel like I'm the only? No, I wasn't being selfish. I was starting to stand up for myself. And a lot of times when you stand up for yourself, you're showing up for yourself. And to this day, he has told me he appreciated what he did. And what I did when I said I could no longer do this. And it felt selfish, but it was a decision that I had to make because I had to show up for myself.
Yeah.
And I really feel like a lot of times we give others so much grace and we forgive to give ourselves grace.
That part, I did.
Say it one more time. Say it one more time.
We give so much grace to and so much mercy, and when it's time for us to receive that, it is so hard to show ourselves grace. It is so hard to be like, I made a mistake.
Grace to grow.
Someone had recommended me go to speak to someone, and that's the first thing she told me. She said, "How can you not have grace for yourself?" And it was like, but I didn't know how to. And then this is so funny to have this type of conversation, because I was literally trying to encourage another lady just earlier today, and then in the last couple of months, I found myself in this self-isolation to where I literally was not even responding to different things. And then I had to tell myself, you don't have to apologize to just make room for you, because I was always catering to everybody else's demands of me. And I'm feeling like, well, that's the way I'm supposed to be, because I'm supposed to be this nice person. I'm supposed to be available. But yeah, I was feeling like, even in business, to say that I'm giving away everything, but I'm over here starving. Because there was nobody pouring back into me. And then I felt a kind of way, because I'm like, well, why they know what I do, but at the end of the day, it was like, but that's your fault. It's not their fault, because you're the one who's doing it. Like, they're only going to take what you give. And I literally had somebody call up, and I was like, you blocked me? I sure did. and I literally, I caught myself, that's what's so funny about this conversation, because I caught myself saying I did, because I heard you. And if I wasn't worthy at that time to be anything, then I'm not worthy now. We ain't spinning the block no more, But it was just that conversation. But I found that I was isolating myself, and I'm like, you're not going to apologize for taking time to not respond. If you took it personal, that's on you, because I ain't even got nothing against you. It's not even about you. I just decided that I just didn't want to have to.
Never about you.
To have to even, and then I feel like, well, if I call them now, they're going to be like, well, why you ain't called all this time? It was like, I don't even want to talk about it. Because it was that period that I needed. But everybody will take it to where they get the offense. So now you feeling, well, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
My word, free yourself. I always free yourself. I'm talking to you to free yourself. I'm talking to me to free myself. So I want to thank you for joining the conversation and having a candid conversation. As you can see, we still have more to talk about around this subject. But there are ebbs and flows, to growing. Showing up for yourself will end with what Alfreda said, means showing up for yourself first. Being okay with being selfish, self-centered, and taking some time back, from whoever that you feel like, and I won't say that's stifling you, that you're allowing. Because at some point we got to face what we allow to happen. Yes, no, we're not understanding, but no, go ahead.
But if you are in a space where you are truly loved, showing up for yourself not only benefits you, it benefits the people that you love. And I saw that our anniversary was last year. My husband gifted me some things just for me, and he said, I see that you are spending time with yourself.
Wow. Yeah.
And he noticed that because I'm taking care of Benzana. I can take care of these kids, and I let everybody know now.
Yeah, you do.
It's God and then Benzana. Let's be clear. Then it's hubby and children, because I can't take care of y'all. And I've been doing that for so long, and I'm broken. And when he gifted me, it was like bath oils and this different stuff. And he was like, I need you to keep taking care of yourself. So for those of you that are not in that situation, I promise you there's somebody out there that will. He benefits. The child, I put my own self in timeout. I don't put the kids in timeout. I'm out. And they know once that door closed, if you're not bleeding, serious. And You're not bleeding,
Yeah.
do not come.
Yeah.
Because mommy needs to be in timeout so that I can fill up my cup. But that's so true. We got to take care of ourselves.
So,
I
so
like that.
I like
well,
that.
why don't we let that be our takeaway?
Yeah.
That we will put ourselves on
Yeah.
timeout
Beautiful.
when we need to have time,
Yes.
especially when you're taking care, of a family. You got all of these different roles, that you're doing. This is what it's all about. Because I guarantee you, some young lady is going to walk away from hearing this conversation and be empowered to take herself back and to show up for herself. And you all see the shirt, and it is not a shameless plug because it has meaning. There is beauty on the other side. Fill in the blank. For me, there's beauty on the other side of the lack of confidence that I had, because I now have it. There's beauty on the other side of understanding what it means to truly be in a relationship that's reciprocal. There's beauty on the other side of friends who really are friends. There's beauty on the other side of saying, hello, come out, let me be. So I really, really appreciate you all taking the time to join the conversation and sharing your stories. Buy the merch.
Of course.
Get empowered, and listen to the podcast, Power Conversations and Connections with Susan. We've done a podcast on grace to grow. This season is a season of me and guests. So every fourth episode, first is a guest, and then 2 solos, and then a guest. My next episode is me and my daughter recorded a podcast. It was really enlightening. I was like, okay, you serving me up silently, but okay. we gonna let it go.
And she was showing up for
But
herself.
absolutely. And so all I could do is walk away as a proud parent.
Absolutely.
My daughter.
Space to be herself.
Refer and let's continue, right? Let's continue. Look forward to future conversations. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
really
Thank you.
appreciate it.